All right, good morning Queensland and good morning Toowoomba. It's wonderful to be here today for a very exciting announcement, and from the outset can I say that we have our last person in Brisbane hotel quarantine as we speak, and they'll be leaving, I understand, around 3 o'clock this afternoon. Well, we need to absolutely make sure that we are prepared for the future, and this regional quarantine facility is state-of-the-art. Can I thank from the outset the Deputy Premier who has been driving this for our government, as well as John Wagner and the entire Wagner family. We talked about this in August, construction started in October, and today it is operational. The first 500 beds are complete. Stage 2 will see 500 more beds added to this fantastic facility. We've had a bit of a sneak preview behind the scenes, and can I commend all of the staff that work here. This is tremendous news. It's tremendous for the community, from the local bakery supplying food here to the police, and all the learnings that we have learnt over the last 2 years of the pandemic. Things such as security cameras, ventilation, making sure that families feel comfortable and safe, and that is exactly what this facility does. I'm very proud of this facility. It's something that Queensland has supported, and it's something that we have absolutely for the future. And who knows what's around the corner. In November, I don't even think we knew that Omicron existed. We don't know what's going to come around the corner, and this facility will have a whole range of uses, and the Deputy Premier will outline those, as well as our Deputy Commissioner. Can I also mention that during the height of the pandemic, 127,772 people in total have been through hotel quarantine in Queensland. 77,000 of those have been international. The remainder have been domestic. And our hotel quarantine kept Queenslanders safe. During the 2 years of that pandemic, we really weathered the storm, and our hotel quarantine played a huge part in that. And I thank all of the staff that have been involved in that. Having spent 14 days in hotel quarantine myself, can I tell you, I would rather have been up here in one of these state-of-the-art cabins with fresh air than in hotel quarantine. At peak, we had on a single day 5,014 people across 22 hotels. And police committed to COVID operations were around 1,200 per day, including 263 that were doing hotel quarantine. But the Police Commissioner will give more details about that. But can I congratulate everyone who's been involved in this? This has been a mighty effort, and it's something that I know Queenslanders and every single Queenslander should be proud to know, that we have this facility now and into the future. I'll hand over to the Deputy Premier and then to John.
Well, today we effectively mark the end of what has been a very long program of hotel quarantine. As you've just heard, more than 120,000 people have been through that program. And while it has kept Queensland safe, we are now very fortunate to have our own dedicated Queensland regional accommodation facility here in Toowoomba. We've had nearly 60 guests through here already over the last week or two. It's allowed us to reduce our use of hotels down from a peak of more than 20 to 11 towards the end of last year, and now down to just 3. And as you've heard from the Premier, the last of those guests will leave today. We understand that this is the second such dedicated facility in Australia after Howard Springs. The facility recently under construction in Melbourne, will begin taking guests next week. You'll be aware the Commonwealth is also constructing a further facility at Pinkenba that we expect to be available to take guests from April. The current guests are a mix of unvaccinated travellers and mariners, but we anticipate anticipate an ongoing number of arrivals, particularly from countries where their vaccines aren't recognised by our TGA and therefore will be required to quarantine, as well as farm workers, refugees from other countries that haven't been able to access vaccinations. The project here has focused throughout on ensuring we deliver local benefits to the Toowoomba and wider region. We've made sure that the tradies and apprentices who constructed the facilities wherever possible were Toowoomba locals. The staff here, wherever possible, are Toowoomba locals, and we're sourcing as much of the food and equipment and consumables and laundry from local as well. And as you've heard the Premier, that even goes down to the food, the produce and the bakery goods. Look, throughout this pandemic, you've seen different governments take different approaches. Our government has taken an approach of being prepared for whatever might come. Other governments have taken a wait-and-see approach, and that has cost us dearly at various different points. And so I'm very pleased that going forward, we will have access to this facility.
Thank you, Premier and Deputy Premier. And I think today is very much a day when you'll be proud to be a Queenslander. And I'd like to congratulate the Queensland Government again for their commitment and intestinal fortitude to go it alone with a facility such as this, which is without doubt the most advanced quarantine accommodation facility in the country and probably the world. So we are also very proud, as Stephen said, that 85% of everything you see on this site has been bought locally in the Toowoomba region. And the benefits for our region, with 400 plus workers full-time on this site, has been enormous, and it's been very welcomed by the local building and supply people around Toowoomba. I would also like to take this opportunity again to thank Dennis Wagner and Joe Wagner and their respective teams for bringing this centre to fruition in a very timely manner. It's been an extraordinarily difficult task, particularly with the weather last year, but we're now open for business, and we look forward to the Queensland Government taking a lot more guests here to our facility. So thank you very much to the Queensland Government, and really appreciate the support for Toowoomba. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and absolutely fantastic to be here in Toowoomba to see this facility. I was just reflecting with my staff a moment ago how we started 2 years ago. Every hotel we had a different infection control process. We had different security systems. And in fact, months into it, we were retrofitting hotels with security systems. They were not purpose-built for what we were trying to achieve. Thankfully, though, it worked extraordinarily well. We put those learnings into this facility with the planners, with the project managers, with the Department of Health and us. A lot of what we have learnt, in fact, most of what we have learnt in the last 2 years has gone into this facility. I had the pleasure of going into the office where the staff are working, and just is extraordinary in terms of the technology, the processes and the systems that we have in place to make this work. And I think we were lamenting that wouldn't it have been nice that if we had this some 2 years ago. But it is about future-proofing, and it is about protecting us for the future. Who would have thought that 2 years ago we would be, we thought it would take a year or so, and we know that in the future we may be needing this facility again. So to all of the staff, Department of Health and the police, as well as all of the project people involved in this facility, absolutely tremendous facility to work in, second to none, and certainly state of the art. A sincere thank you, and thanks for having us here today as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Premier, Deputy Premier. As we opened on the 5th of February and we took a controlled and staged approach to that opening, going through various quality assurance checks to make sure our facilities management, our healthcare services and our security arrangements were fit for purpose to go live. It's gone extraordinarily well. We've taken a number of guests through the facility and that will continue. We've had positive feedback from the guests. They like the rooms, they like the fresh air. That's been going really well. So we've had a range of international travellers, mariners, and from yesterday we started taking people into isolation. So we had our first cohort for those into isolation. Thank you.
Thank you. We might take questions on this first.
How many people are expected to stay here over the next year and who will they be?
Yeah, I'll get the Deputy Premier to elaborate as well and our Quarantine Commissioner, but we see a whole range of uses for this facility. So, first of all, we don't know what outbreak's going to happen next and where in the world. So there may be countries that may be deemed that will have to quarantine. Secondly, unvaccinated people who are flying into Queensland will come here. People who need to be isolated but can't, they may have a close contact and they may have a vulnerable person in their setting, such as people with a disability. So that's another cohort. But also too, there's conversations happening with getting more workers into Queensland and across the country for a whole range of sectors, including agricultural and healthcare, as well as international students, some of which may not meet the TGA requirements of what is deemed to be an acceptable vaccination. Well, this facility is here and it is going to serve a whole range of purposes as I just outlined, and we're already welcoming guests, so that's fantastic news. And like I said today, the last person will leave our hotel quarantine in Brisbane this afternoon. It has been a mighty effort, an absolutely mighty effort of the number of people who've gone through hotel quarantine. And don't forget, the federal government is still building Pinkenba. There's another facility, as the Deputy Premier said, that's opening up in Victoria. And of course there is Howard Springs that already exists and has been operating throughout this whole pandemic. Now, how lucky is it that Howard Springs was in existence? Now we have another facility that matches, which, I'm going to be a bit parochial here and say I think it's better than Howard Springs. But we have learnt from the lessons of the pandemic, so this is state-of-the-art. It's absolutely state-of-the-art.
Sources within the project have told us that there's been a slight delay on the kitchens. The kitchens aren't ready here. Or they're having to truck in food. Will that increase the cost to taxpayers of this?
Not to my understanding, but I can get our Quarantine Commissioner to address that particular issue.
Sources have also told us that the Queensland Government has contributed $227 million to this project. Do you still think that's good value for taxpayers, given the reducing need for quarantine facilities? I
don't think that figure's exactly correct. What I will say is that my understanding is that the total amount to actually build this facility is less than any other facility in Australia.
So we've been told that $227 million is the figure we've been given by sources close to the project. Are you saying that's not correct? Now, if so, how much is it?
They are commercial in confidence.
So previously, your government has issued a press release saying you're giving the Wagners $40 million for the entertainment precincts. Why is that deal able to be put in a press release, but this one has to be kept secret?
It's commercial and confidence arrangements.
It's Queensland taxpayers' money. Surely the Queensland taxpayer deserves to know how much money of Queenslanders is being spent on this.
Yeah, and if the federal government wants to release how much it's costing them to do Pinkenba, well, then we'll revisit this.
Why couldn't the state and federal governments work together to just create one quarantine facility? You said that you've got about, well, the Deputy Premier said that there's about 60 guests here at the moment. Is it really worth two in Queensland? Why couldn't we just have one?
Well, as we all know, 3 years ago we did not have a pandemic. We didn't have a pandemic 3 years ago. Who was to know that Queenslanders in the world would face a pandemic? I don't know what's around the corner, but you know what? I know that I'm future-proofing this state for whatever is thrown at our way. Let me also say this. When we had the Omicron breakout, we had predictions between 5,000 and 8,000 hospital beds would be needed in this state. The thought of having to put makeshift tents or retrofit convention centres was something that we had canvassed early in the pandemic. But because we have this facility, in those early days, I knew that I had a facility, if we needed flow on from our hospitals, that was purpose-built, fit for purpose, ready to utilise. This is about having facilities that Queenslanders need for the future. Now let me also say this. We can build schools in 1 year. My government has delivered schools that are built from beginning to end in 1 year. This facility has been built from October to January and is now operational. That is absolutely incredible.
You raised the Pinkenba site, but
I might get the Deputy Premier to comment on that. Yep. No, I'll come back.
the Pinkenba site, though, Deputy Premier, taxpayers essentially get to keep that, where this one we have to give it back after a year. Do you see the value in that?
Well, certainly the arrangement that we have here, the lease arrangement, has allowed it to be constructed much more quickly than the Commonwealth's facility. It is available now when we expect that the Pinkenba facility will only be available to start commissioning in April. That's still some months away.
Categorically, you're saying, as the Premier said, she believes that 227 million is incorrect. Categorically, is that correct or incorrect?
That's certainly not what we're paying to lease the facility.
How much have you put in? Categorically,
the lease cost, as is usual for lease arrangements, is commercial in confidence.
The total value of the money that Queensland government has put in, we are told, is 227 million. Are you saying that is not correct?
Well, look, over the last 2 years, there has been an ongoing funding allocation for quarantine and isolation services.
I'm asking specifically about the Wellcamp project.
That's right. So that's what I'm saying is that while there is an ongoing budget allocation for all quarantine and isolation services, that dollar figure is not correct for the cost to lease this facility.
Why did it go to tender?
This project went through an appropriate financial and accounting process for allocating the funds to do it, but it's not unusual for lease arrangements to not go to tender. You generally identify a facility that suits your needs and then negotiate with that provider, and that's precisely what's happened here. Well, we know what it has cost us to be hiring out sometimes 22 whole hotels. And so we were very easily able to identify what would represent good value. We also have an understanding of what other similar facilities are costing to be built. And we had a very open book arrangement here where we were able to work with the Wagners to find the most efficient way of getting a purpose-built facility up and running in just a few months.
I'm not talking about the lease arrangement here. I'm talking about the total cost, the total dollar amount given by the Queensland government to the Wagners for this project. You're saying 227 million. Categorically, you're saying that's not correct.
That's not correct.
I was told that there was a situation where a person arrived into Australia, they were brought out to Wellcamp, but they were the only person on the bus, or what's classing that policy around the numbers when people actually being brought out to Wellcamp?
So what's your question?
So the numbers that have been brought out to Wellcamp at any one given time.
We don't know who's coming in on the flights. That's the issue.
Yeah, so we have a bus contract with a bus company, and they're available to transit guests when we need them.
What is the total number of passengers or people you're expecting to use this in the next year?
Oh, well, look, that will vary at different times, and I don't think it's possible to give that kind of figure. The number of people in hotel quarantine has varied considerably throughout that period. We've needed to be ready to take very rapid surges. We saw a number of very rapid surges as the pandemic played out, and as arrangements varied. This facility will give us base capacity as well as surge capacity in a purpose-built facility.
Then how do you know you've got such a good deal?
Well, that'll be something for the governance team and the quarantine commissioner to determine at the time at which the Commonwealth concludes construction of that facility.
Are you currently recruiting staff for this facility, and are there adequate staff numbers to service the facility if it does reach 50% capacity?
Look, I understand there's adequate staff numbers at the moment. Obviously, there are labour shortages in some key professions, and so the teams that are recruiting those folk have done a great job of getting sufficient staff here, and I'm no doubt they will continue to do so.
A number of major airlines have recently imposed vaccine mandates on passengers. You've said the facility will be used for unvaccinated travellers for quarantining. Do you think, given those mandates, we will receive enough unvaccinated travellers to make the 1,000-bed facility viable?
Well, I've said that will be one of the groups that will be accommodated here, and at this stage one of the 2 operational pods is for unvaccinated arrivals. There are many beyond the visitor categories. There are other visa categories who may well arrive here having been vaccinated with vaccines not recognised by our TGA, particularly international students. So we know there is a number of international students from places like China who are already enrolled at Australian universities who will return here but have been vaccinated with a different vaccine to what we are using in our country.
Anything more on this?
Yes.
For me?
Yeah, or for the Premier, either or. If you've got such
I'll give it a go.
If you've got such a good deal, then why aren't you revealing how much is being sunk into it?
Well, it's the nature of these kinds of lease arrangements that they are generally commercial in confidence, and that's why this one is too.
What's the difference between the 40 million for the entertainment precinct? Why can you put that in a press release and not this?
Well, that's a grant, not a lease. So we're not leasing the entertainment precinct. We're contributing to the capital cost of the entertainment precinct. We very much hope that the Commonwealth will also contribute to the capital cost of that entertainment precinct. In this case, we are leasing a facility, and it is quite common practice for those lease arrangements to be commercial in confidence.
Can I just add one more thing to like the Deputy Premier was saying? You know, the Australian government's about to open up international travel. There are going to be a lot more flights coming into Queensland. There's going to be seasonal workforces where their vaccination rates do not meet the TGA requirements. There are going to be people who are unvaccinated coming in. This facility will be put to good use. Let me assure the public, this facility will be put to very good use. And like I said, when we were planning 8,000 people to be in hospital, think about that for a moment, I knew we had a facility that could cater for any overflow.
Does the public not have a right to know how much public money is being spent on this project?
As the Deputy Premier said, some matters are commercial in confidence, and this is a lease agreement. Now, the federal government is also building a Pinkenbar facility. If at some stage they want to release those costs, we are more than happy to release our costs. As I said, these are lease agreements and they are commercial in confidence.
If the federal government's going to do it, then you're going to do it. Why is that a bar for releasing?
Well, there seems to be one standard for the state and one standard for the federal government. I've addressed this. I've said it's commercial in confidence. Sorry. Okay. So I think we're finished with this. So the DP and I can answer any other questions. So everyone else can go. Yep.
Premier, we've learned that the Public Service Commissioner, Robert Setter, was the only department head that didn't comply with the Integrity Commissioner Dr. Stepanov's 2020-21 audit of lobbyist contacts with public servants. The Public Service Commission is meant to be in charge of governance. What's your response to his lack of cooperation?
Well, I understand that he's addressed that issue and it should have been done.
He issued a statement this morning expressing his regret that he didn't comply.
Good.
And at the time that he said to the Integrity Commissioner, you don't have the powers under the Act to compel department heads to do this, you'll have to go out to the 300 or so entities that have done it and do it yourself. Her staff were cut down to, I think it was 2 full-time equivalents. How can the Integrity Commissioner do her job when she's...
That's not my understanding about the staffing arrangements.
The staffing wasn't cut down at that
My understanding it was 4 and there was some recruitment processes.
And does Mr. Setter still have your confidence as head of the Public Service Commission?
I expect the heads of my department to comply with correspondence they receive, incoming and outgoing.
Well, he hasn't met that expectation. So
Well,
what's the outcome?
well, the Director General's spoken to him about that. Okay? Okay, sorry, any other questions? Are there any other questions?
Yes. How do you feel
Yep.
about the Q test back down on vaccine mandates?
Let me say very clearly, I want to see as many people vaccinated as possible. Great news in the Toowoomba region, over 95% of people have had their first dose. And we're seeing that in other regions. I know in Moreton Bay North, they are over 95% vaccinated, as are Wide Bay and Mackay. And gradually we're getting there. Like, well done Queensland, 92.4% at least one dose. We're getting closer to that 95%, and some regions have already hit that mark, which is fantastic. Can I say very clearly, if anyone has any concerns, there was a large group of people, I understand, who are waiting on Novavax. Well, that Novavax has arrived, so they can source that vaccine. But if anyone has any concerns whatsoever, can you please, please, please go and talk to a health professional? It is an added layer of protection. And to those people out there that are thinking they don't need to get their booster, please go and get your booster. We have been advised that that booster gives that added layer of protection against the Omicron variant. So please go and do that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.